Hey everybody, it's Matt Shu from Upright Health, and in today's video we're going to be answering the very common question of can hip problems cause knee pain or knee problems? So a little bit of background on me. By my mid-20s, I was basically in pain every morning. I would wake up and everything would hurt, basically from toes all the way up to my head. One of my major issues was actually my hips. My hips were really stiff, tight, achy, they'd snap, they'd pop, they'd feel like they were burning, they'd feel like something was grinding inside both hips. And so that's how I got so interested in figuring out how to get hips to move better. And that's been a multi-year process. Now my hips are much better, and that's what has inspired me to create programs like Healthy Hips 1, Healthy Hips 2, and also co-create the FAI Fix with my buddy Shane Dowd. If you have hip issues, it's definitely worthwhile to check out those programs. You'll find a link in the description section if you're interested in figuring out ways of retraining your hips. Now, what this all has to do with knee pain is that there are muscles around the hip joint that can definitely affect the knee joint. And we're going to talk about my experience actually talking with a doctor recently about some relationships between the hips and the knees. So I recently went to a doctor, a sports medicine doctor, to talk about things that were going on with my hips. So a little bit of background here. My hips in the past were really weak and tight, and they just felt like they couldn't do what I wanted them to do. So like something like this was impossible. I'd feel like major tightness, soreness, and like this feeling like these muscles are like wood, and then they'd like snap and crunch and pop and be all weird. Going out like this on the other side was impossible. Like I could barely even step over a bench. Just lifting my leg up like this was difficult, and getting my leg up and over something was really difficult. And I also couldn't even touch my toes. Like I'd just be like stuck here, and then if I tried harder, I just rounded my back and nothing would happen. So now it's not really that big an issue. It's really just a question of having retrained the muscles. Now, I went to the doctor actually to kind of get a medical perspective on some of this stuff, just to see, what kind of thoughts and ideas are out there in the medical world and what he could tell me. So one of the things I was mentioning to him was particularly about the relationship between my hip and my knee. So if you want to see all the other stuff I talked about with him, you can check out some of the other videos where I talk about the doctor's visit. There will be links in the description section. But basically I showed him this one motion that I noticed is sometimes problematic. So basically when I'm here and then I twist, right? So I just have one foot planted and then I twist as if I were gonna like kick that way. So if I'm just like this, I can sometimes feel discomfort. So I pointed it out to him. I pointed these parts out from here, going down just below the knee, kind of at the top of the calf. Okay, so I said, when I'm here and then I twist, I feel, sometimes I get this discomfort here that goes all the way down, and I feel it here, down below the knee. And the doctor said, as soon as I pointed at the knee, the doctor said, oh, that's the knee. That's a knee issue. That has nothing to do with your hip. That would be a separate issue. And I thought, wow, that's a really strange thing for you to say. But I didn't say it out loud at the time, but I thought it, and I'll explain why I thought that was really weird. So what I found most interesting about this exchange was that it really showed how much the doctor wanted to find a structural, local explanation for things. So when I pointed out here to here, he said, those sensations cannot be related. He's looking for a structural explanation for something here that makes it hurt here, and he's looking for an explanation of some sort of thing that must be broken here that affects only here. But what's really interesting is if you look at an anatomy book and you just take a look at the hamstrings, what you'll find is I actually traced the hamstrings for the doctor. So the hamstrings start up here under your butt, and then it goes right down to the back side of the knee, just below the knee at the top of the calf. So when I told him, I feel this sensation from here going all the way down to here, I was actually tracing my hamstrings and pointing out to him that, hey, I feel my hamstrings be a little bit funny when I try to plant the leg and twist. And his immediate reaction was to actually dismiss that, which means he's dismissing a very direct connection from the knee area to the hip area. The hamstrings cross directly over there. So when we're thinking about whether or not hip things can cause knee things, we need to remember that there are muscles that directly cross these joints that can affect both joints, right? So you have quadriceps muscles, these thigh muscles that actually attach up here, and those go down here and can affect the knee. You also have your inner thigh muscles, which start up here, they affect the hip joint, and then they'll move all the way down here into the knee joint and affect the knee joint. So the question of whether or not hip issues can cause knee pain or knee issues, that's a question that should be pretty easily answered just by looking at these cables that run all the way down the leg and below the knee joint. It's just a basic anatomy question. Can this thing that is directly controlling the motion of this area affect this area? The answer is yes, just by definition. So what's really interesting is the connection between the damage that you see in images like x-rays and MRIs and actual pain and movement problems is little to none, right? So you could have really bad damage in an x-ray or an MRI and still have no symptoms whatsoever. So it's really hard to see the connection between the structural issues and the symptoms. But it's really easy to see that muscles are going to have a direct effect on how the joint moves and on how comfortable everything in that area is going to be. So for an example of this, we had a video recently about Miyako, who was told she had arthritis in her knee. She had really debilitating knee pain, and she was in her 50s, and a doctor said, "You've got arthritis. Just give up running, that's going to be it." And she actually found on her own that stretching her hamstrings made the whole problem go away. Her knee completely started feeling better, and it required no surgery, no knee replacement. She just was able to start moving again because she just had to stretch the hamstrings. So if you haven't seen that video, you definitely want to check that one out. Besides stretching the hamstrings, there are, of course, other muscles that we can work with. Just as I mentioned earlier, you've got your quads, you've got your adductors, you've got all these different muscle groups that can contribute to the function of the knee, or the good function of your knee. So I'm going to show you a couple exercises that I've found helpful, that we seem to find pretty helpful for people who have things going on with their knee. These are not magical cures, they're not always going to fix everybody's knee pain, but they're a good place for you to start, and you can start troubleshooting and learning about what helps your body and what doesn't. And that gives you an idea of what you can try next. If you try one thing and it helps, that gives you a path that you can sort of explore. If you find another thing just does nothing for you or makes things worse, then you know that's a direction you don't want to go. One of the most important things that we stress with clients is that you need to be learning about how your body works and how you train your specific body, because no two bodies are going to be exactly alike, and the movement issues that we all have are very individual. The soccer player versus the football player, those are two different sports. The hockey player versus the ballerina, everyone has different movement requirements, and they're going to have different patterns that they've developed over time as a consequence of how they train, of their own genetics, of how their body just naturally is. So, give these exercises a try and be mindful, be careful, take note of what you notice. And if you need more ideas than what we got here, you can always check out some of our other do-it-yourself programs. So one of the things that I found in terms of connections between hip and knee was that as I was retraining my body and retraining my glutes to fire, I started to develop a sense of tightness and strain around my knees. While my glutes were firing more and more, the knee started to feel tighter and tighter, and that was not very comfortable. So what I actually found was taking a ball to do a little bit of self-massage was really helpful. So basically this area where you have a back pocket, it's right behind the bony part of your femur. So it comes up, there's this thing called the greater trochanter. If you Google it, it'll help you visualize what's going on. But basically, it's that bony piece here, and just going behind it with the ball and sitting on it and giving myself a little bit of pressure on muscle and getting those muscles to relax was really helpful. And actually, quite magically and mysteriously, I would feel like my knee would no longer hurt so much if I just did a little bit of massage back here. So when you're doing this on yourself, you want to attenuate, you want to manage the pressure that you're putting on there. So you don't need to like jam hard and try to go as hard as possible. What you want to do is just find areas that feel like they're particularly sensitive. Like you're just like, oh, what's going on there? Why is that so sharp and tight and painful and tender? All those weird words, right? You just want to sink into those areas. You don't need to push hard. So I'll give you an example. Like right now, I could jam down into this spot, or I could just try to let my body relax into the ball. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to try to like force anything into it. I just want to let the muscles there learn to chill out a little bit. And that's all I'm doing. And so basically, you're getting these hip muscles to relax. These hip muscles control the femur, right? So these butt muscles and these hip rotators control how the femur sits and moves. They're going to affect how the hamstrings are moving, right? And whether or not they're tense, whether they're maintaining tension levels, that can also come into play down into the knee. All these things can be affected by these muscles, right? In the same way, like the contraction of your biceps affects your triceps contraction, or contracture and tension in any of your hip muscles can affect other hip muscles, which can absolutely go down and affect the knee. So I like to spend like 1 to 2 minutes on this and just find some of those rough spots. You can go all around that area, right around that bone, and just find areas that kind of light up. And again, just melt into it. Don't try to push hard. The goal here isn't to make it so nothing ever feels tender. The goal is to get things to feel more relaxed over time. You don't have to destroy anything you find there. That's actually probably not a good idea, because you could push real hard into a nerve there and you won't probably like that. But in general, if you're being mindful, just melting into it, you're going to be fine. So that's one of the first exercises that you may find super helpful if you get knee tension that builds up, especially if you're getting that knee tension after you've been doing a lot of exercise. Another very, very important muscle group to be thinking about here is the quads. So the quads are attached to the front of your pelvis and then go all the way down into the knee. Those are super, super, super important for keeping your hip and your knee comfortable. So if you feel like your hips are not feeling right and your knee's not feeling right, it can also be an issue of the hip muscles, these quadricep muscles, and these knee muscles, these quadricep muscles doing something funky. So to do a quad stretch, one of my favorites is doing a kneeling quad stretch. This is one that you can do against the couch, so it's also been called the couch stretch. Basically, you just do this right here with a cushion under your knee, or if you have a particularly strong knee, you don't need to use anything, but I prefer to have cushioning under my knee at all times when I'm doing stuff on the floor. So if you're a better man than I, then you can feel free to do whatever you want. So you are going to take one foot and have it planted here. So if you're just getting started here and you're having trouble getting into position, the way you do this is you have your hands on the floor, and then you put one foot forward, and then you start working yourself back and up. So some people are going to find already just being in this position is already difficult. Okay, if that's you, then that's fine. So what you can do is be here. You can try to push your hips forward towards the floor and get a stretch through the hip flexors and the top of the quads. Okay, that's a totally fine stretch you can do to get in there and get things to loosen up. Once you've done that, you can also come up so you're vertical. If you need something to help you balance here, you could use a bench, a chair, a stick, whatever you want. One thing we want to think about is maintaining a posterior pelvic tilt. We don't want to be in big anterior tilt. We want to get posterior tilt and make sure we're not like twisting this way. That's generally not, for a lot of people anyway, who have not worked on it, that's not really a really stable position. It can be stressful in the knee. You can, however, twist towards the side of the front leg. That's generally going to be fine, and you're going to feel a little more stretch in different ways in the muscles of the quads. okay? And then as you get better, then you can change the foot position and get the foot flat up against the wall, and then work yourself, whoops, need to shift that position a little bit, okay. And then work yourself up like this, so you're getting flush up against it, and just trying to get your, oops, all right, there we are, and then you can get right up against the wall, like so. So you're looking again to get quad stretch. You could be here with the foot, here, or keep yourself down here, and just work on getting into those hip flexors a bit as you get that to loosen up. So by hip flexors, I'm talking about both the quads and the psoas and iliacus, which are some other muscles that might also affect some things, okay? So that's how you get into the front of the hip muscles. And then I'm going to show you a way to get into the inner thighs. So when you're thinking about your inner thigh muscles, a lot of times people are thinking like, well, the best way to stretch my inner thigh muscles is to go in and try to do the splits, or try to do, you know, pancake splits, or just go super wide with their legs, whatever it is. And those are good ways of doing some things, but if you're trying to do your inner thighs and you're doing something like this stretch, you're actually not going to be getting the adductors in the best possible way. I've found in terms of trying to relieve some of this tension in the knee. This can be useful for some things, and it can sometimes be useful for people with knee issues, I've found, but this is generally a pretty advanced type of position, and you don't really want to just go diving into this. What you want to start with is just an easier inner thigh stretch. So you can just use a pad on the floor again. If you have a carpet or knees of steel, don't use the pad because you are awesome. But the rest of us are going to use a pad right under our knees. And what you can do is you can just stick your leg out to the side, and you can start to do what I like to refer to as the goalie stretch, because it just helps you get some of this inner thigh flexibility, some of that extensibility out of those muscles. And what you want to do is try to get this angle nice and wide as you comfortably can. So between this leg and this leg, right, you can see I've gone way past 90 degrees. A lot of times when people start, they start out here, and they can like barely even get a 90-degree angle here, and then it gradually starts to creep out as they get those muscles working a little bit better. The muscles get a little stronger at that end range. Muscles learn how to handle that position. So what you will often feel is like this area, if you're really tight, this area is going to feel a ton of tension. You should respect that and not go crazy there. You're not going to try to like push it harder and make it explode. That would be a bad idea and would be a really, really not fun thing to do to yourself. So just go easy. If you feel like there's a lot of tension there, just hang out there and start thinking about it as an exercise in building strength in that position. So rather than like sit there and just try to force it to let go, start thinking about actually pushing the foot down into the floor and then relaxing, and then push it down into the floor and then relaxing. So you're actually kind of using those muscles there just to get your brain talking to those muscles so that you can learn how to fire them and also relax them, okay? This is, if you've had trouble doing this, that's okay. You don't have to do this every time, but doing it as a static stretch, letting those muscles relax, and then maybe the next day when you do it, try to fire them, relax them, fire them, relax them, can help you get better control over the range of motion and better control over those muscles, okay? You can also experiment with your hand position. So you will find the more and more you stretch your hips that there's an incredible variety of things you can do to change the nature of a stretch. So if you were to like walk your hands way over this way, you might feel like your butt cramp, you might feel like everything just goes wild, you might feel like there's more stretch, you might feel like there's less stretch. You could walk back over this way, see how that feels. This way can feel like maybe something jams. If you feel jamming, you don't want to push through the jamming, but you want to see if there's a way you can get that area to relax, right? So I always encourage people to not think about jamming as like, oh, I have a structural problem, but really think about jamming as muscles not knowing how to coordinate in a position properly. So for a very long time, I could not go into this position because I would jam up right in the front of the hip here. Like just trying to do this was completely impossible, right? But The hamstrings had to learn, the adductors had to learn, the quads had to learn, the hip flexors had to learn, the glute med had to learn to do its job. Like a lot of muscles had to learn how to work together in a different way to allow clearance so that it could get to that position. So you just want to explore a little bit and keep working to feel a lot of stretch through these muscles on the inner thigh. And that helps, again, relieve some of that tension that can go straight into the knee. Okay, so that's a great way to experiment and work with your adductors. Again, just respect your body and just experiment gradually and carefully. All right, guys, so that does it for this video. Can hip issues cause knee issues? Yeah, they absolutely can, because the muscles that control the knee are often muscles that help control the hip. And if anything goes wrong at the hip, all the muscles are affected. So anything that's directly connecting down into the knee is going to be affected too. So we went through a bunch of stretches. Hopefully you find some of those helpful for you where you're at in your life. If you like this video, be sure to click like, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on other great videos to help you with your body and your hips and your knees and your shoulders. Be sure to share this video with others if you thought it was worth sharing. And if you haven't already, check us out on Patreon and support us. Consider making a pledge to help us make our YouTube videos ad-free so you never have to watch another commercial on our channel again. How does that sound? Sounds good? Good. Head on down to the description for more helpful links, and as always, remember that pain sucks. Life shouldn't. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, and comment, and don't forget to subscribe.